Doesn't that just look beautiful? What's up guys, my name's Michael and today we're going to be doing a tutorial on how to build your own stock tracking spreadsheet. Personally, I really enjoy using these spreadsheets because I find it helpful for me to keep track of all my investments in a single place, and it provides some useful tools and analytics that can help me in my decision-making processes. Today we're going to start with a relatively simple spreadsheet, and in the future we can build in more features to that. By the end of this video, you should be able to recreate a very similar spreadsheet for yourself and be able to use that for your stock investing. I'm going to go at a slower pace so everyone can follow along, and I'll also have timestamps in the description of the video linking to which portion of the project we're working on at a certain time. All right, so without further ado, let's jump into the computer. For this spreadsheet, I'm going to be doing it all in Google Sheets, which is Google's equivalent of Microsoft Excel. So I'm using Google Sheets because it's free with a Google account and it links up very nicely to Google Finance. So in building a spreadsheet, usually just start one piece at a time, add the pieces that you know you're going to have. So in this case, let's start out with our stock tickers. So these will be the actual tickers that are traded on the stock exchange, and we'll use this information to link up to Google Finance. So for instance, I'm just going to input a few stock tickers here. So we've got Microsoft, Facebook, Vanguard Index Fund, a Vanguard Bond Index Fund, and then Apple over here. So relatively straightforward, 5 stocks right now. But in this next column, we'll put our shares, the number of shares we have in each stock. And the reason I'm putting these on the left-hand side, and we'll be adding more columns over here on the right-hand side, is these will be the two of the main things that we'll be inputting into the spreadsheet. The rest will be formulas that we'll actually calculate based on the inputs. So just going to make up some numbers here. And one other thing that I'll add is I'll actually add a cash position here. You don't have to do this, but I will for my sake. If you have a Robinhood account, some of your account will likely be in cash if it's not invested, so you can keep track of that there. Okay, so this is our start. It's not going to look pretty at first, but that's okay. We're going to worry about it at the end. Usually when you're building things out, it can take some time to get it really where you want, and then once everything's all in the position that it should be for the spreadsheet, at that point it's a lot easier to do the formatting and things like that rather than have to redo that as you're building the spreadsheet. So next I'm going to add our third input, which is average cost. So this is basically your unit cost basis. So your cost basis would be like the total amount that you put in for your number of shares, and the unit cost basis or average cost would be over all the shares you've purchased, all over that on the security, what's the average cost you paid. So once again, I'm just going to make up some numbers here. Okay, so basically these three things right here are your inputs. So depending on what your portfolio is, you'll have different stocks, you'll have different amounts of each stock, and you'll have different prices paid for those stocks. Those are the main inputs at this point, and from here we can begin building out the rest of the spreadsheet. And so, yeah, there's no formulas in here, you just input that actual value. But from now on, we're going to start going into some actual inputs. So the first of which will be the price, and this will be the live price of each of these stocks. So the way that we're actually going to get this is we're going to create a formula that'll go to Google Finance and look up the stock price of each of these stocks. So in Excel or in Google Sheets, what you'll do to do a formula is you'll do equals. And this indicates that the program that it's actually a formula, and there's various tools and formulas you can use, but what we'll be using is Google Finance. And it'll create a drop-down list of formulas that will match what you're typing in. So in this case, we're going to do Google Finance. When you click on that, it provides some helpful tools into what are the inputs for this function. So for Google Finance, we have ticker, and that's going to be the main one we're going to add. So instead of, you might be tempted to type Microsoft here. In this case, it'd need quotes. Quotes indicates it's a text. So you could do that, and it gets you the stock price live, which is fine, but To make the spreadsheet actually dynamic, and so you don't have to manually update this, what we want to do is have this formula, instead of typing in Microsoft, we want it to reference this text here in this cell. So to do that, we're going to actually get rid of this and we're going to have it reference C7. So you can either type in C7 here, or you can just click, once the dropdown goes away, you can just click on the cell you want to reference. So hit enter after that, and then this gives you the live price. So to get this formula to the other cells, you could, retype Google Finance and just do it all over again, but that's rather inefficient and very tedious. So there's a couple things you can do. One is if you have a formula that you're dragging down through to fill up a column, there's a little button here in the corner. You can just click that and drag it down, and it will drop down the formula through all of those. And so this one isn't actually, this last cell here, F12, isn't really accurate because it's looking up a symbol CASH, which is just as some security, I don't know which one, but it's not exactly what we're looking for. That was kind of small, so we'll blow it up so it's a little bigger for you. And there's another way you can actually do that, which is instead of using this little dot and dragging it down, what you can do is highlight the column that you want to fill, and then you'll hit Control D, or I think on Mac it's like Command D, and it'll auto-populate and fill the rest of the formulas down for you. So if you look over here, it's got Google Finance C11, which is what we want. So now in this column, we can do a calculation of our gain and loss. So for this, I'm actually going to do total gain and loss. So of all the Microsoft shares, how much are we up on all of them? So to do this, we'll just do another formula. So it's going to be equals. So to get the gain or loss, we want to take our price and then subtract what we actually paid. So if the price is over what we paid, we've got a gain, and if not, we've got a loss. So that'll be the total gain or loss per each share, since the price is per share and the average cost is per share. So we'll want to multiply that by the number of shares that we own. So in this case, $40 total gain for that. Oh, and another tip for highlighting is that if you hold Shift and then use the arrow keys, you can create a box that selects cells just by moving the arrow keys and holding Shift. So by holding Shift and having G7 selected and then hitting down 4 times, I can then create that column and then hit Control D, and it fills the rest of the column for me. And then also double clicking these adjusts the column length. So you can do that. We'll do that at the end to make it look nice, but for now, we'll just focus on the actual insides. So next we can do percent gain. So this will express the gain as a percentage. So we'll do this by equals our price divided by our average cost minus 1. And then we'll bring that down. So this formula here is just the price you'd use to calculate a percent and change. I know I'd said I'd leave formula stuff for the end, but I'm going to change this to percent just so it's easier to see, easier to read. All right, next we can add total equity. So this is how much your current value is in each position, the total equity you have in the stock. So it's just going to be the number of shares you have, so equals number of shares for each position times the current market price. So you've got that for Microsoft, and then fill the rest down. So I'm going to actually just hard code 1 as the price for each dollar. So each dollar is $1. Sounds redundant, but that's just what it is for this. And we'll fill that in there. Oh, average cost should be 1. Okay, now if we drag these down, yeah, that'll look about right. All right, so we're getting the spreadsheet coming together. It doesn't have any visual tools yet, but we'll be able to use this information going forward to create some of those graphics. But there's a few more things I'd like to add first. So one thing that can be helpful is in the context of your entire portfolio, it's nice to see just offhand what percent of your portfolio is in each position to get an idea of how diversified you are and how concentrated each of your positions actually is. So for this, we'll do portfolio percent. So for this, we want to use total equity. So for that is how much your position is in that stock. And we want to compare that to the total positions you have in all of your stocks. So we want this as a proportion. So it's going to be I7, our total equity in Microsoft, divided by, and now we want a total for everything. So there's a couple ways we could do this. We could actually, I'm going to delete that. We could create a total down here. And the way we can do that is we do equals and then do SUM for sum and then parentheses, and then we'll just select a range. So in this case, we're just selecting this whole range and the parentheses, hit enter, and this is the total equity for our entire portfolio now. So now if we want to do a percentage, we can just do that I7 divided by our total portfolio value. So in that case, we get 16%. So not too bad. Now, if you drag this down and fill it out, you'll get some errors, and that's okay. But there's a lesson here to be learned, which is that when you drag it down, these references are dragged down exactly the same as their relative position. So when you drag it down, this cell now references this one, which is correct, which is what we want, but it's no longer referencing the total portfolio value. So we want to lock that in so it doesn't move. And the way you can actually do that is you can change what these are called relative references. They're relative because they're relative to the cell that you're writing the formula in. So if you drag this down, they'll move. But you can also create absolute references, which are references to a specific cell that won't change. And you can do that by adding a $sign directly in front of both the letter and the number of the cell. So in this case, we want to always reference that specific cell, the total portfolio value, and we don't want that to move. But we do want the individual stock equity to move down. So we do that. We now have our percentages, and you can just quickly check this by highlighting everything. And then in the bottom corner where my face is covering, down there, you can see it's at 100%. So that's a good check there. So we've got portfolio percent. One other thing we can add is total cost. So for total cost, that'll just be your unit cost times the number of units. And then bring that down. So for this total, we can actually bring this across. And just like when you dragged it down, you can also drag formulas right. And so this now gives us the totals for each of these columns. So there's 100% there, and then this is the total amount that you've actually paid into the portfolio. All right, so this is actually not too bad so far. I'm gonna clean it up a little bit. I know I usually say leave this till the end, but this will just give us a little more space to work with in terms of where we're gonna put our actual visuals and graphs. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm just double clicking this little column, and it'll auto adjust the size to fit the largest text that's in that column. So this just keeps things a little more neat and tidy and reduces the white space within your spreadsheet. And actually, I'll take that back. Since we're almost done with what we're going to be doing for this video, we can work on a little bit of the formatting to make it look a little nicer. So in this case, I like having the numbers formatted as numbers, that's fine. But for any dollar amount value, I actually like using an accounting format. So you can highlight those and then go to more formats, and they've got a currency, but they've also got an accounting. And I like the accounting format because it has negatives in parentheses rather than just having like a negative sign in front. I think that's a little, at least for me, it's a little easier to see. For these, you won't really have negative prices, so you don't need to worry about that. But for the gains and the total loss, you could. So looking ahead, we've got, these would all be formatted the same way. So to save time, you can select everything you want. If you make one selection here, you can hold Control or the equivalent key in Mac and select other sections of the spreadsheet that you want formatted the same. So that way I've got all three blocks selected. I only have to format them once instead of doing it 3 times. So for this, we'll go to Formats, and then we'll do Accounting, And I actually want the negatives to appear red. So what we're going to do is we're going to edit that format. We're going to go to formats, more formats, custom number format. And up here, this gives you an example of what this coded format will look like. And it's a little complicated here. Honestly, more complicated than I initially expected, but I think what we want is for, I'm gonna try this if it's red. There we go. Basically putting the red in this section here says, hey, if it's a negative number, apply all these formats. It's really annoying. Apply all this format, and then having the red in front means I'll color it red as well. So we'll apply that. Now they're finally red. That took way too long to do, but we've got that set. For me, I like adding a few little borders as well. So you can go up to here, borders, and have a border, and then maybe a total outside border, and then one here for the totals at the bottom. So just do a bottom border here. All right, so that's starting to come together a little bit. Zoom out just a tad. Okay, so this is looking not too bad. So next up, if this is going to be a spreadsheet that you're looking at for total sort of overview of your portfolio, and you have like all your positions in here, then this is a good place to kind of have a dashboard of what your current like portfolio is looking like each day. So for that, I sometimes like having sort of big numbers up top that have sort of key things that I'm looking for in my portfolio. One of those would be like the total value of my portfolio. So what we'll do here is we'll just grab this total value right there and have that nice and big at the top. Since I know what that is, I'm actually going to format it as just a number. Remove the decimal, and then I'm gonna make it nice and big. That's a little too big for me, but there we go. So that's total portfolio value right now. So total portfolio value. So when you open your spreadsheet, you'll know exactly what your portfolio is at that moment in time. Another thing I like to add is my percent. So this would be what percent I'm up or down on the portfolio, which would just be your total equity divided by your total cost, and then again, -1. Format that as a percent. I like having only one decimal place, and then what we'll do is we'll make that a little bigger as well. That'll be our portfolio gain or loss. And so this will give you a good overview of your portfolio. If you want to add more positions, what you can do is basically click on a row and then right click and then insert a row above, and you'll do that, and you can add, now you have room to add more positions in here. So trying to think, let's do Pepsi. Let's say you just bought 8 shares of Pepsi and current price is $1.16. So let's say you bought it for $100. You got it on a good deal. From there, all this, the rest, once you've inputted these 3 things, all the rest is formulas. So basically just highlight this entire row and move it down 1, and then you can do Control D. Alternatively, you can just highlight this entire row and then click this little dot again, pull it down. It'll auto-populate, fill the rest. Notice also your portfolio total value is updated, portfolio total gain percent's updated. So the benefit about doing a spreadsheet like this is, you only have to input 3 things for your portfolio if you add a new position or change a position, and the entire thing updates, and life is easy, life is good. Okay, now we're going to zoom out a little bit, because what I want is for some of this white space here to be filled up with some nice sort of visualization tools and graphs that can help give me a quick snapshot, visually at least, because I'm a relatively visual learner and person. So I like having those kinds of tools just to easily see what's going on. So what we'll do, A couple of the graphs that I like to do is have just a pie chart of what my portfolio is in each percentage. So we'll start with that one. So you can go to Insert and then go to Chart. So right now it's got no data, but we can place the chart where we want it to be in our spreadsheet. So for this chart, we want to do a pie chart, and then we can select our data range. So the first data range you can select by clicking this little grid, select data range. Then I'll ask what data, and you can just drag, in this case, this whole column here, and then click OK. And that'll be the label, so that'll be the actual tickers. And actually, we're going to redo that. We're going to include C5, which is it goes from ticker all the way down. So that'll include this in there, and that'll be actually the title for that data. So for the values, we want the total equity. So we're going to select all of that. Click OK. And poof, we've got our graph right here. So we want to use row 5 as headers. Notice that the label is updated to ticker and the values, the total equity values. So from this, now it's a lot easier to see, although you can see it in the portfolio percent here that, looks like about quarter portfolio is the total stock market index. Almost quarter is Pepsi, but it's a lot easier to see visually. Okay, I've got this much in VTI, that much in Pepsi. Wow, my Apple position is much smaller than the others. Is that something that you intended? If not, now you can visually see that. If so, then yeah, you've checked that with a visual graph. So this is one thing I really like at a glance. Plus also it gives you a quick view, Microsoft, Facebook, Apple, if you add up all those percentages, that's a fair amount within just like the tech space. Maybe that's what you want, and that's, your portfolio is heavily weighted towards tech, but it could also give you sort of a heads up flag. Hey, my portfolio is weighted a pretty significant amount towards tech. Is that what you really want? Or is that a risk that you're being now susceptible to being sort of over concentrated in a certain sector? It's up for you to decide, but you should at least be aware of it, and this tool is a great way to sort of see that from a quick glance. Another thing I like is having my gains and losses in sort of a bar chart all together in one chart. So for that, we'll do another chart here. So we got stacked column chart here. We'll want to grab some data. So it's asking what data, and to make this simple, I'm just going to grab all this data here, and we're just going to take out what we don't want or don't need. So the x-axis should be the ticker, so it'll be the ticker symbols. So the x-axis will be the ticker symbols, and I actually want to grab the cache, so I'm going to redo the data range. We're going to grab everything in here. Okay, so now we've got the cache. So the x-axis we want to be the ticker, that's fine. What we really want is to have our total cost and then our gain and loss to be showing, because that'll give us an idea of how much we actually put in, and then how much of each position is a gain and how much of each is a loss. So going back to the graph, we want to get rid of that. Average unit cost, get rid of that. Price, get rid of that. We want total gain and total loss. We don't want total equity. Don't want total percent. Okay, so now we've got total cost and total gain or loss. I actually don't want the order to be that order, so we're going to reorder it. So we're going to take that, we're going to copy that, actually we're going to cut that, and we're going to put it over here so that will swap the range. Hit enter. There we go. So now we've got the total cost in blue and the total gain or loss in red. So I like this graph as well because similar to the pie chart where it gives you an idea of how much is in each position, here you've got an idea of not only how much is in each position, but how much you put into each position, and then how much of the gains are from each position. So if you do this on your own portfolio, you'll likely see that, you know, some of your positions might have a significant portion of the gains for your portfolio. That's okay. And some might have more of the losses from your portfolio, or some might have losses spread out. But this gives you a visual reference to see, you know, how each position is doing relative to the others. One last thing I'll add up here is I'm just going to go and do a function, and I'm going to do equals today, open parentheses, close parentheses. All right, so now we've got quick dashboard, date, our portfolio, how we're doing, and a few visual tools at the bottom. So hopefully this will give you guys a good start into how to build your portfolio. So this is with Google Sheets. I definitely would encourage you to try this out if you haven't already. I personally really enjoy using this, and it's automatically updates anytime, you know, I check. And since I'm usually on my email every day, it's a handy tool to just take a peek at every once in a while. In the future, if you guys like this kind of content, I can do another tutorial building this spreadsheet out further and adding a few more additional features. So just let me know in the comments if you're interested in that. And if you've got any questions or technical difficulties, if you're building this spreadsheet, just let me know and I can help you out in the comments there. In the future, I plan to make a free spreadsheet course for you guys, which will include downloadable versions of all these spreadsheets. So if that's something you're interested in, you can sign up for my private email list and you'll be the first to know once that's available, and you'll have the link for that when I get that done. I hope you guys found that useful. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.